The president made this announcement, albeit on Twitter, that he was going to sign an executive order suspending all immigration to the United States. Your reaction?
Look, I think it's another diversion. The agencies don't even know what it is. No one knows what it is. Yesterday or the day before, we were talking about WHO. I think the president ought to stop these diversions. What we really need is a focus on testing, a focus on contact tracing, so that we can open up again. And that should be the focus. That's what we've been negotiating this all night. And I don't think we should be lost in diversions that have little to do with getting the testing and the opening up of America that we need.
Testing, huh? More of this. Yeah, testing's important. Testing is not a panacea, not even close. Testing doesn't mean people won't get the virus. It doesn't mean people won't die from the virus. But this is now the complaint that the left has dug in on, because you'll never have enough testing. You'll never have enough testing. And that's a way to gripe about reopening and say, oh, see, it's not that we didn't want to reopen at all. It's that we didn't want to reopen until the testing was good enough. When will the testing be good enough? September? October? Oh, maybe after the election, huh? Interesting. It's absurd. But they're talking now about how Trump has said he did make it the announcement on Twitter, which is very Trumpian. He's amazing because the way he slaps around these journalists is, I know that the journos hate it. That's why I love it. It's fantastic. We've all had to stomach for far too long these preening social justice wannabe overpaid babies in our professional national news media. We've all had to listen for how long now to them just lecturing the country and thinking that they're so important and so irreplaceable. And Trump's just like, look, you're a clown, you're a jerk, you're a joke. Let's start with that. You want to make this about you? The economy is getting crushed and people are dying from a terrible virus. And you want to stand up here when you have the attention of the whole nation and not ask a question that's worthwhile, but ask a question that's meant to be a gotcha. So you get an attaboy or attagirl from Rachel Maddow on MSNBC? I don't think so. Not on Trump's watch. God bless him for it. But now he's saying he's going to shut down immigration for a while. And the left is predictably freaking out about this. Well, here's the problem that they're going to run into. Of course, we don't want immigration right now. Of course, a pause in that would be good. Remember how we were told that you can't overstress your hospital systems right now? You know what other system you can't overstress? The federal government's agencies that are tasked with preventing illegal entry or having to even vet and take care of legal entries into the country at this point in time. We're already, think about this. We were trying to get U.S. citizens and green card holders back into the United States that were stuck abroad. And that was a challenge. We're really going to want to sit around and have to process and deal with the possibility of people coming into the country who, look, this is one of those establishing of sovereignty moments where, if you're not American, if you're not, part of the American family, you're not someone that's at the top priority for U.S. resources right now. That's just the way any country would be. That doesn't mean anybody that shows up at the emergency rooms or wherever that needs help. Of course, we're going to help everybody that we have to help. We're a humane, we're a kind, and we're a fundamentally moral. America is a fundamentally moral country. A lot of other countries aren't. In fact, very few countries are anywhere near as fundamentally moral as we are as a people and as a nation. But yeah, there's going to be a pause on immigration right now, according to the president. And we're going to go through this again. And I just want to establish right now, they're going to say he doesn't have the authority. He doesn't have the authority. He can't do this. The will of Congress. Remember the whole battle that went all the way up to the Supreme Court over the so-called Muslim ban? And it was so terrible, the Muslim ban. I mean, it was a ban on like 12% of, by population, countries from the Muslim world, all of which that had already been established by the Obama administration, as not just high risks of terror, but also not having proper procedures and counterterrorism cooperation in place to prevent the possible infiltration of terrorists into this country. Right. That was that was the whole purpose of it. And oh my gosh, the left, you don't have a right to do this. And federal judges, who apparently can't read the law very well, don't understand what the law really is. They make it up as they go along. I mean, I got to tell you, we're always talking about how undergraduate programs in this country are not what we were led to believe. And I'm a big proponent of being honest about this. I think that most BAs and what I would say, most bachelor degrees aren't worth the very highfalutin paper they're printed on. I think mine was actually printed on like a goat carcass or something, or like sheepskin or something like that. Yeah, I know. Weird, right? But they're not worth it. Guess what else isn't worth it? As an intellectual, and now as a credentialing exercise, sure. But intellectually speaking, I'm amazed at how many people come out of law school and have just a fundamental misunderstanding of law and political philosophy that has been ingrained in them. I mean, they're really taught to just become liberal activists and think that they're supporting the law. They think that words and language and principle are whatever they want them to be. It doesn't really matter what they are. It's all subjective. It's all up for change. Anyway, this made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court before with the so-called Muslim ban, or as I like to call it, the temporary pause in admissions from countries that have established a history of terrorist threat and do not have proper vetting procedures in place for the purposes of preventing a surge in risk to the United States from terrorism. But there's no cool acronym for that, so I get it. And there's no pithy way of saying it. But the so-called Muslim ban, which was not a Muslim ban, the temporary travel restriction, there we go. That's what they should have called it, temporary travel restriction. Went all the way to the Supreme Court. It turns out that the president, under the Constitution, under the laws of this country, does in fact have, for national security purposes, the authority to say who can enter the United States of America. We've already run this experiment. We've already seen it. And the libs are going to turn around and say, what do you mean he's stopping immigration? He can't do this. Yes, he can. Because the national security purpose of stopping additional entries into the United States for non-U.S. citizens and non-green card holders when you're dealing with a pandemic, and when we don't have the procedures yet, maybe we will, and maybe they'll get them in place soon, to do rapid and immediate testing for anyone coming into the country, there is a very real possibility of introducing people into the United States who have COVID-19, which places further burdens on our healthcare system, on our system in general. That's a real risk. They can say it's not, but it is. That is a real risk. In fact, Singapore, which had done a very good job of dealing with the initial outbreak of COVID-19, has had a secondary outbreak, not a huge one, but a secondary outbreak. And what have they already traced it to? People coming to Singapore from outside. People who are infected who show up in Singapore. And who have not been in countries where they had the same stringent lockdown procedures and the same vetting and science-based measures in place to control the disease. So we've already seen this. We've already seen one country where I know it's a very small country, but it is a country, and we've already seen that the entry of people from the outside can be a problem. So are you going to see any honesty about this from the left whatsoever? No, you will not. No, you will not. And you'll have, for example, Mayor Eric Garcetti, who is really like a one-man illegal immigrant lobbying arm. I mean, that's really what, Garcetti, anything that's about illegals, and it's a shame for the state of California, but, illegals are now, and you say, oh, Buck, they can't vote. Well, they get driver's licenses, and they get in-state tuition, and they get all kinds of state benefits. They get health care. They get money from the state as part of the COVID-19. They're giving them just cash. And also because of the connections between illegal aliens and people who are citizens and do live in the state of California, and the emotional and personal ties to millions of people in that group, this is now a voting constituency that the state of California, if you want to be the mayor of L.A. or if you want to be the Governor Newsom, you got to just bend the knee to whatever illegal aliens want all the time. You can never talk about rule of law stuff. Oh, what do you mean with that rule of law? That's, hey. So here's L.A.'s mayor, who is, I think, slightly less awful than New York's mayor, but that's a really tight comparison. Here's what he says about the immigration tweet from Trump. Play 3.
I believe in governance by law, not necessarily by tweet. I'm proud to be the grandson of an immigrant from Mexico. That's why I'm the mayor today. We have a president who is the grandson of an immigrant as well, who married immigrants. We can't run away from who we are and the people who are helping us most right now. I think we are all in this together and all life matters. And this isn't going to get stopped by playing politics. I think that Mexico is more worried about the rate of infection from the United States right now than vice versa. So let's make sure that we stay connected and engaged with the world. And let's not start writing off anybody in this country just because of where they come from.
Maybe by all immigration, he means everybody. Who knows? Maybe European,
It's
everything.
astounding.
Maybe.
Some of the darkest chapters of our American history are written in times like the World War II, when we scapegoat people and try to change the subject. This is a public health emergency. This is not an immigration emergency. So I hope we can stay focused on what this really is.
Notice the immigration, the pro-immigration fanaticism that's really on display here. My friends, you and I are being told we can't leave our homes. You want to talk about not feeling like America? We're supposed to stay locked in our own home, only going out to get, necessary groceries. And even then, you got to wear a mask and you got to social distance. And I'm supposed to be worried about the fact that we're not going to be taking in new immigrants for maybe a matter of a few weeks, maybe a month or two. Look at the priorities of the Democratic. Oh, this is not who we are. Yeah, we're also not a country that's supposed to be on universal lockdown, you idiots. Maybe there's a real emergency right now, and being a nation of immigrants is not the most important thing for us to be thinking about. It's just really complicated. They can't figure this out?
One person who can't figure it out is Nancy Pelosi. She's put down the wine cooler long enough. She's going to answer the question.
Play 19.
The president used the word waste 3 times at least in his comment, and I think it's a waste of time to even comment on what he said. When he uses negative terms to describe anyone he wants to hoist blame on instead of taking responsibility. I spoke truth when I said he's a poor leader. He never accepts responsibility. He always assigns blame. It's not too late to tell the truth or to do the right thing, and I hope that he will. This test for the back and forth between the governors and the president is very interesting because he, on the one hand, wants to look like, well, we have all we need, let the governors do it. But the fact is that it doesn't add up, and it has to add up.
What is she talking about? She just babbles. Sometimes Trump has a particular way of saying things, and he can get a little bit wrapped around his words. But you always know that he's trying to say something, and you know what he's actually trying to say. What the heck is Nancy Pelosi saying?
Yes, this is the president is the place of the figure here is the place not a good leader.
Third in line for the presidency, folks. Most powerful elected Democrat in the United States of America. This is who they offer up. This is who all the multimillionaire news anchors out there who want to lecture you from the Hamptons because they don't want to stay home in quarantine in their apartments. No, they get to go out to their estates and then take over a wing of it to set up their home studio. And then they go, why would the peasants want to leave their homes? Chris Cuomo, Mr. I have COVID and I need to be so careful now. There's this report out that guy's he's gone from Southampton to East Hampton. I mean, the Hamptons is just a collection of a lot of very rich people with very high self-opinion. And he's going from one town to another while he's an active carrier of COVID, according to the New York Post. Is anyone calling him out for that? Oh, no. Look at the great job. I apologize to some of you for, I was way too charitable in my early estimation of what, Governor Cuomo was being so nice and friendly to Trump in the early days because he needed to create some distance between the massive stink of his early failures as the governor of this state to get us ready for the pandemic that has killed thousands and thousands of my fellow New Yorkers, my fellow Americans here. So he was all, oh, yeah, I'm just being Mr., trying to be helpful and everything else. That was the whole purpose of it. I had to figure out what had gone on beforehand. I had to dig into the numbers a little bit. So the Cuomo Brothers Roadshow they've been doing, not that entertaining. There's much more important stuff going on. And the double standard that we're seeing from people like Pelosi, and it's just, you're seeing who people really are right now. You're seeing who they really are. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. Okay, team, I wanted to give you the specific tweet on the immigration suspension that the president has now laid out in the last 24 hours. In light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens, I will be signing an executive order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States. It's temporary. It's a suspension. He has the authority to do this. But you know what? Part of what drives people on the left so insane about this whole thing is that this COVID-19 crisis has shown us that secure borders are a national security issue. That's a real thing. That's just the truth. And it also is a reminder, as millions and millions of people are losing their jobs, that a job is something that is precious, and there are a limited number of them, and supply and demand does still apply even in the labor market. That's a real thing. So we're seeing, in many ways, a vindication through historical events here of much of Trump's philosophy when it comes to China, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to borders, when it comes to jobs. You're seeing a lot of where Trump was right early on, and people have been trying to shout him down and say he's so awful and such a terrible president and all the rest of it. Meanwhile, to anybody who's paying attention and being honest about it, if we had made some of the changes that he had been suggesting, and he did give an update yesterday on the wall, they said over 100 miles of wall have been built. These are things that early on we were told were crazy. You can't rely on China to build all these things for you. We have to build more stuff here. We have to move manufacturing back here. The early consensus, elite consensus opinion on this was, no, why? It's great for us. It's great for China. They make all our stuff. We get to, get cheap TVs and sell them all of our treasury debt. And, it's all great for everybody. Really? Having your greatest global competitor that seeks to supplant you and seeks to humiliate you on the world stage over time and make your people poorer and less free and have less influence as a culture over time, that country you're going to put in charge of your supply of necessary medical equipment and antibiotics? Trump knew that was a bad idea. Did the so smart intelligentsia know? Oh, they did not know.
And yet in January, a certain date, you know the date better than I do, we put on a ban of China where China can't come in. And before March, we put on a ban on Europe where Europe can't come in. So how could you say I wasn't taking it seriously? I put on a ban on China before anybody in this country died. I put on a ban. And so you tell me Nancy Pelosi she wanted to have a street party in Chinatown in San Francisco at the end of February. That's a month later.
Devastating and true. Left's going to have a very hard time with this. The media, the disgusting so-called journalist class at the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN and MSNBC. I mean, CNN is now an organization that propagates a lot of lies and has really turned into, it's a bad place with a lot of really bad people working there. Not everybody, a lot of very bad people in that organization. It has lost its way. It is now an organ of propaganda from the left that will seek to destroy Trump at any. And when I say now, it has been for a while, but it's very clear, even during a pandemic, when they could just pivot and become an information source, neutral journalist, try to be more like the perception. I know the BBC is very left-wing too, but the perception of the BBC around the world of just, we're just reading the news. We don't have opinions, CNN could do something like that, but they don't. They do what they always do. They're the propaganda arm of the DNC, and they're an utter disgrace, but they're also feverishly working to rewrite the history here of what really happened. I mean, remember that. And if someone wants to challenge you or argue with you on how Trump has done such a bad job, you had de Blasio saying that Trump is like Hoover or Ford. He's never going to get reelected. Oh, because his pandemic response was so bad, before a single American had died from this, shut down flights from China, which even St. Fauci has said saved thousands and thousands of American lives by preventing the direct importation. Wait a second, you mean that we shouldn't just bring in people who are foreigners and not worry about what happens with the situation of public health during a pandemic? Because we shut that down, lives were saved. And it wasn't perfect, and we've obviously lost a lot of lives. I've told you, in New York, it's density in the subway. It's the population density and the subway and the global travel hub. You add those three things together, and you have a nightmare scenario with this disease. We have that more than any other place in the entire United States, which is why in New York City is 65% of the cases of New York State. New York State's a big state. People forget that here. I mean, you head out to Buffalo, it's like you're in Canada. It's not close. It's like an 8-hour drive from New York City. So there's a whole other state, and most of the cases, a majority of the cases are right here in a relatively very small square mileage area with a whole lot of people packed on top of it. So Trump took action before there was a single death, and Pelosi and all the rest of them are saying, oh, if we had been in charge, things would have been so much better. There's just no reason to believe that that's true. There's no evidence to suggest that that's true. Pelosi was saying,
It's come down to the party. It's come to, party in Chinatown. It's going to be great.
Yeah, that was, we've heard the audio. I played it for you on the show. Pelosi was saying, yeah, come on down. It's fine. We'll all be fine. Come on down to Chinatown. Right when the virus was really starting to spread and hit badly here in the United States. So we can't allow them to rewrite the history here. We can't allow them to get away with pretending that something else would have happened. I mean, just so we understand how really political this is. Again, de Blasio, remember, de Blasio is the mayor of the worst hit COVID-19 city in the country. And here's the way that he talks about this when he's given a national podium. Is he being a man for this moment and trying to bring us all together and find ways to help the situation? Or does he whine, blame Republicans, and say that Trump is basically a fascist and the worst ever? And Republicans, too. Play 17.
What's happening right now in Washington is the discussion of adding to the stimulus money to support state and local governments so they can get back on their feet, so they can actually move forward to that restart of the economy. The House, under the leadership of Speaker Pelosi, is 100% ready to move forward. Senate Democrats, under the leadership of Chuck Schumer, are 100% ready to move forward. Senate Republicans are trying to stop aid to cities and states around the country. And let me remind you, blue states and red states, they are actually standing in the way of people of all persuasions, all backgrounds, big states, small states, every part of the country getting the help they need to get back on the feet. So the Senate Republicans don't want to act. They don't want to protect New York City or any place else. But you know what? Literally, with the snap of his fingers, Donald Trump could fix that. If he would just say the word, the Senate would jump.
What a liar. I mean, just what a scummy, slimy lie. This guy is gross. He's really bad news. I mean, he's a bad person. He's not somebody that I respect at all. It's not like I disagree with him, but I think he's a good guy. And there are Democrats, plenty of them, that I would take that position. I think they're wrong, but I think that they're fundamentally decent people. They're just confused. De Blasio he's just gross. And here, while we know what the problem is that we're trying to deal with right now. First of all, Congress isn't even in session. Nancy Pelosi thinks that they should be on an extended vacation right now. Extended recess while the country is in this horrible circumstance. And okay, while that's happening, we're trying to find out how much more money is needed for the Paycheck Protection Program. Who is standing in the way? Democrats. Democrats are standing in the way. Here's Mitch McConnell giving an update on the PPP. Maybe we should just start calling it the 3P. Play 6.
It's now been 4 days since Paycheck protection program ran out of money. Republicans have been trying to secure more funding for this critical program for a week and a half now. At this hour, our Democratic colleagues are still prolonging their discussions with the administration, so the Senate regretfully will not be able to pass more funding for Americans' paychecks today. However, since this is so urgent, I've asked that the Senate meet again tomorrow in a new session that was not previously scheduled, and the Democratic leader has agreed to my request. Colleagues, it's past time to get this done for the country.
It is absolutely past time to get it done. And why isn't it getting done? Because Democrats like Pelosi do not have their feet held to the fire over this by the media. Democrats don't have to worry about getting pummeled in the national press for standing in the way. They don't have to worry about that. And that is what they're doing. That is what they're currently doing. It's really remarkable. It's really remarkable to see how much dishonesty there is around all of this. I mean, here we go. Oh, we got an update on this. Hold on. That's what I was looking for. Schumer says deal reached on aid for businesses. Hopes for a Senate vote today. Okay. We have a deal and we'll pass it today, the Democrat told CNN. He's a few I's to dot, T's to cross. Okay, well, here's what it says. The Butterfield said it would include $310 billion for small business, a top priority for Republicans for the PPP. The program would now include small banks, credit unions, and nonprofits. Top priority for Democrats for pre-existing relationships with the banks. The large banks have okay, here we go. Butterfield said that healthcare would get $100 billion, split between $75 billion for hospitals, including some for rural ones, and $25 billion for testing. Another $50 billion would go to the Small Business Administration's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. My friends, we are spending. I mean, look, I know that we need this for businesses because we've set this up, but we also have to remember we are spending money here at a rate that is just mind-blowing. We're spending $100 billion like the government used to spend $1 billion. I mean, we're just, here you go, $100 billion for this, $100 billion for that, $10 billion here, $50 billion there. $100 billion is a lot of money even for the government. That's a lot of money. But, remember, couldn't get $3 billion for a wall when the economy was booming. Couldn't get that. No, that was way too much money. But now we're spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. Hopefully this will work better for the PPP than it has. I mean, thus far it's been really disappointing as a program. I mean, we need to be honest about that. We need to be honest in our assessments about how all this is going. So, by the way, you hear that Kim Jong-un is in bad shape? Talk about a story that would have gotten a lot more attention if the world wasn't in meltdown. Let's dig into that for a second. All right, the dictator of North Korea is having a rough one from what we understand here. I know all of us are like, great, guy's the worst. But if he were to expire, there's a lot of stuff would happen at a time when the world is certainly not really prepared to deal with any more than it already is, including the United States government. Here's a story up on Fox News. The U.S. government has extensive contingency plans in place for an eventual death of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un that factor in expectations of mass-scale humanitarian crisis inside the country. Sources discuss those plans amid conflicting reports about the reclusive North Korean leader's health. Those same sources urged caution about these reports, which have claimed he's facing serious health issues after a cardiovascular procedure. While his condition is unclear, a well-placed defense intelligence source told Fox News that the U.S. government has extensive plans that dealing with the complications that could arise from his death. The official described the likelihood of a huge humanitarian crisis within North Korea that could include millions of people facing starvation and a mass exodus of North Korean refugees into China Intelligence sources told Fox News that part of the plan would be to rely heavily on China to step in and help manage the situation on the ground inside North Korea, partly due to China's proximity and partly due to logistical challenges of the U.S. providing humanitarian assistance. So what have we been told? The Daily NK, which is a periodical based in South Korea, Seoul, which is run by North Korean defectors, reported that Kim, who's only 36, was recovering from his April 12th surgery. The report said he had been in bad health because of heavy smoking, obesity, and overwork. South Korean officials downplay these reports. So, look, we don't know. They're saying it could be totally untrue. There's no specific trend here. We don't know. They don't know, early stage. But, Kim Jong-un, if he were to expire, that would create a whole bunch of issues. I'm not even sure what the succession plan would be in North Korea. I can promise you this right now. All the journalists reporting this, they have no idea. It's like, oh my gosh, there'd be a catastrophe. They don't understand what that means, other than that's the thing you have to say right now. But the world would not do well would not do well rather under the circumstances in trying to capitalize on the possibility of flipping North Korea from the totalitarian hellhole it is to something a whole heck of a lot better, given that we're all focused on our own stuff right now. We do not have the bandwidth to take on any additional challenges outside our own AO. But yeah, that's the story on Kim Jong-un. It got a lot of attention last night. I wanted to mention it here. It could be a non-story. I mean, it could be essentially fake news. So there we have it. I also want to talk about the testing situation a little bit more, because there's going to be so much arguing about this. Let's understand that right now there is no way that Democrats are ever going to say that testing is acceptable, and because this is going to be blamed back. They're going to reflect this back onto the federal government, right? That's the plan, to make sure that this is Trump's fault no matter what. Here is the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, who is saying the following. Play 12.
Governor, the president just tweeted that the testing is up to the states, not up to the federal government. Just a quick reaction on that. And also, is the state capable of doing the type of testing it needs to be doing in order to not only identify who has the disease, but who has had the disease?
The president is right. The states, testing is up to the states, which will implement the tests and logistically coordinate the tests. For example, in this state, I should make the determinations as to what labs participate in testing. We have about 300 labs in New York. It's my job to coordinate those 300 labs. Which ones should do this? Which ones should not? How do I decide what labs work where? They're regulated by the states, these labs.
Do you think that they're going to be able to figure this out quickly? Do you think that this testing regimen is going to be a smooth situation? It's going to work out well? Nope. But remember, even though it is up to the states, and you've been told this by the governor of New York, who will get blamed for any problems with testing in any state? The president. The political incentives here for the left are so clear. We know what they're going to do before they're going to do it, but there are a lot of people that don't pay as much attention to what's going on as you do, and guess what? They can be swayed by this. Oh, well, if the president is really responsible, that seems kind of reckless, doesn't it? It seems like he's done a bad thing. Meanwhile, Vice President Pence, who has done, I think, an excellent job so far coordinating in this crisis, but also being a voice of calm, which matters at some level, right? It matters to have somebody up there who doesn't seem like they're trying to score cheap points, who just wants to help people, wants to do things the right way, and use his power to do so. Here's Pence on the testing issue for states. Play 11.
We told the governors once again today that by our best estimates, we have enough testing capacity today for every state in America to go to phase 1 if they meet the other criteria of 14 days of reduced cases and sufficient hospital capacity to prepare for any eventuality that may occur. Once again, we have enough testing capacity for every state in America to go to phase 1 But we assured the governors today that we're going to continue to work around the clock to expand the testing capacity, support supplies, and to support their efforts to encourage social distancing and the very mitigation efforts that the American people have been doing that have brought us the progress that we see all across the country today.
So enough tests for every state to go to phase one. But remember, phase one is a dynamic target. Once you get into phase one, you could have more cases and you could have to revert out of it, right? You could have to take a more extreme position. So, and remember, it's phase one of reopening. That's where we are. Pence is telling you the truth.